Okay, welcome in. In this video, we're going to talk about ggplot, specifically ggplot2, which is a library in R that is super useful for plotting visualization. I don't actually know what ggplot1 is, but I guess ggplot2 is the second one that came out, I assume, frequently just referred to as ggplot. And R is really nice for data visualizations. The base R stuff has some good tools and functions for visualizations. It's relatively easy to use. ggplot is a little bit more advanced and takes some time to learn, but I think the learning curve is worth it because the amount of really cool visuals and charts you can make are pretty stunning and sort of endless, all the different combinations. So let's get right into it. Let's consider the iris data set. So I just typed in iris and hit return enter. And I don't here. Let me do head of iris. Hit return enter. And one nice thing about R is that it has a bunch of pre-built data tables, data frames inside R. Iris is one of them. It's probably the most commonly used. It's just a data frame that gives a bunch of different statistics about flowers. So the length, the width, the petal length, and the petal width. Sepal, I guess, is part of a flower, and then broken down by different species of the flower, supposedly irises. And I'm going to define, I just prefer working with data tables. That's just me. I'm going to define data as the data table version of iris. So I have the same thing. I have my data here. So I could easily use R's base plot and plot, for example, data sepal length, data sepal width, hit enter, and I can get this plot over here. And that's easy. You know, I have my X and my Y. My X is my length and my Y is my width here. It's shown in the plot, but this is kind of an ugly plot. It's, you know, it's very Spartan and I can add things to it, but it's certainly not the most beautiful plot in the world. You have all these ugly dollar signs that you have to type out. And you know, it's just not that aesthetically pleasing. So instead, we are going to start with our ggplot. And the first place to start is just the ggplot function. And here I just have ggplot parentheses. If I hit Control Enter, I'm going to get this just sort of gray box. And this is important because in ggplot, you essentially start with a blank canvas, what you have here, and you tack on different things. And we're going to see that sort of adding on sort of functionality. So the first and most important argument is data, because that tells us what data we're passing into our ggplot function. And then the second most important argument is this AES argument, which stands for aesthetics. And this AES argument is a function by itself. So you see I typed AES and then two parentheses. Within here, we're going to define the aesthetics for our actual ggplot plot. So I'm going to say X equals, this tells me what my X value is, sepal dot length. And note that I don't need the dollar sign because ggplot knows I just passed data in here. So sepal length refers to a column in data, comma, Y equals, that's not a comma, that's a period, sepal dot width. And I have my data, my aesthetics are, these are the X and the Y. If I hit enter, I am going to get, instead of just a blank canvas, now all of a sudden I have a nice little X axis here with the length and the width, and you can see these axes are numbered. This is already looking sort of pretty, so that's nice. But we actually want to see something on this plot. So to see something on this plot, we have to add, just like this is an object in R, so we do this plus sign, so we're adding on. Hit enter. Notice that the cursor automatically indents a little bit because it knows that we're adding something on. And we do geom. So geom stands for some geometric object, and you can see a bunch pop up. There's a ton of options you can use for ggplot. If in fact, like you can see, all these are ggplot2 functions, and there's a curve, a count, a density, an error bar, all this stuff. In this case, we're going to use a very simple geom point. And it's a function, so I just want to, call it with these two parentheses, but it's basically an empty function. And I hit return enter, and voila, I have this beautiful plot here. Sepal length on the x-axis, sepal width on the y-axis, and all these dots. And I think this already, we're going to do some more cool stuff, but I think this already looks a lot better than just the base plot. So that's pretty neat. Instead of doing geom point, we could do something like geom line instead. So we want to do lines instead of points. In this case, though, it's kind of weird. It doesn't look great. You can see there's like these weird jumps and things in the line. And maybe that's because we have a bunch of different species. So if I look at the unique species inside of my data table, I have Setosa, versicolor, and virginica, which are apparently are different species of irises. So let's say I just subset by one. I'm going to say species, capital S, species equals Setosa, for example. So here I'm just saying I only want to plot my data where the species is equal to Setosa. I run this and I still see kind of a funky graph. And, we can peer into this and let's see, for example, let's see when sepal length equals Y for data that is Setosa species. So species equals Setosa and sepal length equals 5. I run that and I see I have multiple points in my data where the sepal length is equal to 5, which is why we have this vertical line here. There's multiple points at that spot. So this probably isn't a good, all that to say, sorry, it's a little bit of a roundabout way to say this probably isn't a good candidate for a geom line. It's a better candidate for a geom point. And that's just, things you get used to when you're plotting different data. So let's go back to our geom point. And let's say that I wanted to actually look at this by the different species of iris. So instead of just including them all together, say I wanted to break them down by the 3 species. ggplot this is sort of where ggplot starts to make its earn its living. It has a really nice way for you to break it down with this call function, stands for color. Set this equal to species, and this is going to blow your mind. It's going to break up just by setting color equal to species in my aesthetic function within ggplot. This is going to break my plot up into the different species. I hit return enter and boom, I automatically have these beautiful colors. I really like the ggplot palette. And each, here the red it has this nice legend. This is the Setosa. Blue is virginica, green is versicolor. We can see that Setosa, for example, has a shorter length and a higher width, and just really nice breakdown like that. So that's really neat. I think that's a very powerful part of ggplot. We'll talk more about that in some future videos. And we could keep on adding stuff to our plot. We could add a gg title. That's the way to add the title. So let's say we're going to add the title iris, exclamation point. Hit enter, and we get the same plot, but with iris as the title. And there's no, end to things we could add to this ggplot to customize it. We'll make a future video for that. But I think the important part, which we talked about for this video, is understanding kind of this AES functionality within ggplot, and understanding that ggplot starts with a blank canvas and adds things on as we go. So that is all for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one when we dive into some deeper functions of ggplot.